So the old saying goes that when looking to buy a used car, you want to buy a mechanic's wife's car. Usually that's the one that gets maintained the most out of the family fleet. In this case, with this car behind me, this XC70 T6, it's my car, it's my wife's car, it's what she drives, and unfortunately there was something that I overlooked. We've had a lot of T6 overlands on fleet here with our XC60 project, our XC70 V8, and a couple other vehicles. There's just one thing that I overlooked on this car by a few thousand miles, and it bit me big time. So I want to share that story with everybody so that way I can help you maintain your car before you get stranded on the side of the highway. Right here, this car behind me, my car, my XC70 T6, my wife's daily. Basically, it's got a tune on it from IPD, so it's running some pretty significant horsepower and torque. And honestly, I just forgot about what interval I change the spark plugs. These things call for like 110,000 miles or something crazy. People out there in the community have had this happen to them in their 3.2s and their T6s. We had it happen on our T6 project car and our XC60 driving it around at about 140,000 miles. We did a blog post about that and what the coils do. And so this happened to me. I was stranded on the side of the highway and I wanted to know what was going on with it. So I think we took the spark plugs out, all of the coils, and we're going to show you the failure and what you can do to make sure that you and your family are never stranded on the side of the highway because of something that's actually pretty simple to do yourself. All right, so I'm bringing in my good friend Ken here, who I've worked with for almost 30 years. Ken is going to go ahead and talk about the coils on Megan's car, my wife's car. Her name is Megan. Basically what we ran into, I got stranded on the side of the road. I knew exactly what happened because we just went through it with our XC60 T6 where a coil completely malfunctioned. What Ken and I did figure out together over the phone is he was helping me find a coil to get up and running and get about my way where I was because I wasn't anywhere near my home. We ran into an issue that can save you if you have a few spares in your car, and I'll let Ken go ahead and talk a little bit about that while we show you what happened to the factory coils and why.
So what's happened here is that the design window on the coils is pretty narrow on these. It's not like old school where they threw in a coil that was way massively overkill and then you just used whatever you used. The operation window here is tight. That's why they specify replacing the plugs at 105, 110,000. There are various factors which increase the energy it takes to make the spark. And in this case, the spark energy requirement got so high that the coils became so hot that first, number two melted down, shorted out hard, and popped the fuse and stranded him by the side of the road. We fixed that. He found some nearby, only 5 or 6 miles away, and he found coils, and then we figured out where the blown fuse was, and he fixed it. And then 300 miles later on the same trip, it melted number 6.
Yeah.
Because the factors that were causing the meltdown didn't change.
So the funny thing about this story is I was really far away from home. Anybody who follows me on social media knows that I'm big into, my kids are big into soccer. I was going to an away soccer game. Number 2 malfunctioned. I found one locally to where I was. I Ubered to the AutoZone. I replaced one coil. Big mistake. I probably should have done all of them at the same time. I replaced one. I knew that I had a bunch of them here at IPD, so I just got the one. I replaced the one that failed on the same trip. Number 6 took a dump on me and left me stranded on the side of the highway again.
Now, it was 300 miles later, so
300 miles later.
Time.
Wasn't the exact same time, but I never imagined that another coil would go down the same way that one did within that short of time, which obviously it should have. But the thing is that Ken and I found out is that when the coils implode and they smoke and they short out, there is a fuse that is specific for the ignition system on these coils.
The hard short right here on the side on this one.
So it pops your 20 amp fuse, which is inside the engine compartment. And how I found this out and how Ken found it out, because he was at home on a desktop as I was talking to him to do a little bit of research for me as I was digging through my owner's manual to look at the location of the fuses, was that when these short out, basically it pops the fuse, everything's good to go. And I went to start the car and I knew that the coils were good, generating ignition. But the thing is that it wasn't starting. It was just no on the starter. So we knew that it had to be something that had malfunctioned or something that fuse that popped, which is great because the heat that's generated in these things when they fail definitely could toast your wiring harness, which on my car, thank goodness it did not, because it shut down the ignition system once it shorted with this fuse that popped. So if somebody gets stranded on the side of the highway, the recommendation for us is that obviously if you find a coil, I would always carry an extra 20 amp fuse in your vehicle because it is possible that it will pop. The thing that I will tell people that I think I could have probably limped the car a little bit further, especially the second time that this happened to me. I could have limped it to a store. I could have limped it to a parking lot instead of being stranded on the side of the highway, is I could have looked and physically found out which coil was bad So if you are stranded on the side of the highway, take a look at number 6. Ken noticed this right away when we popped the hood, and we saw that the potting around the top of the ignition coil where it melts, you can visibly see that. Even if you don't have any tools in the car, you should be able to see which coil got exceptionally hot and melted. Now, if it popped the fuse and the car's not starting, you could disconnect the coil and disconnect the injector. I would disconnect the injector and go ahead and replace the fuse. You should, and don't hold us to this, but in theory, you should be able to run on 5 cylinders to get yourself somewhere closer off the highway or to a safer spot.
Just the length of it too. And see, this one's longer because it actually started just falling apart. And they do not smell pretty.
So when I called Ken, once I knew that number 2 went bad on me earlier in the day, and then number 6 went bad on me later on in the day, which I was closer to home, and I called Ken, and as a friend would do, he got in his car and he came over and we went down to IPD as I left my car on the side of the highway, got my family home. Ken came and picked me up late at night and we went down to IPD, we grabbed some coils, grabbed some tools, and we went back to the car. And Ken, we were glad that it wasn't the same coil that failed, but it was another one, which was crazy. And so Ken, obviously being Ken, wanted to know what is it that's causing these coils to fail, even though I was over the threshold of when I should have changed my plugs by a few thousand miles. It wasn't much, but it's running a tune, there's more demand on it. Ken wanted to do research and figure out what is it that's actually causing these coils to go bad. So
it's actually pretty straight ahead. These pencil coils, they're only designed to operate within a certain window. And if you start having to push them too far, they run too hot, they literally melt down. If you look at this one, this coil actually lengthened itself.
Yeah, they're longer than the factory coil.
It got melted to the point that it got longer. This one actually started coming apart here too, you can see it. So it's not just that the potting up here cracks, but the whole coil was melting and falling apart just from working too hard and overheating. Not helped by the fact that the cylinder head temperature on these things is 400 or 500 degrees, and that it's operating in a hostile environment anyway, and then you put too much energy through it. So what causes it to take too much energy? 2 things. Here's a new factory plug. You don't gap plugs anymore because they come pre-gapped, but still, just out of curiosity, I took my plug gapper and checked it, and this is 32 thousandths. 32 thousandths gap right there at the tip, just like you would have gapped a plug 25 years ago.
Yeah, 28 to 32.
Now, we pulled out the factory plugs that were in the thing and are past due for replacement, and they are 45 to 52 thousandths.
You can actually see the difference in the gap between the electrode there on the spark plug itself.
So number 1, you have double the gap that you're supposed to have, which means it takes more energy to make that spark actually jump and do the ignition. Secondly, and this car is running a tune on it, somebody may have been driving the car a little aggressively and driving it for say 2 hours straight,
maybe
in boost. Even if they're not above 0 PSI, since they're not at vacuum, you're actually in boost. So even running at 0 at 75 or 80 miles an hour on the freeway, you are making boost. The higher pressure in the cylinder also increases the required spark energy to fire the car.
Right.
So in a situation where he was going several hours straight at elevated spark energy, eventually the coils got too hot and just started melting down.
Yep. So what happened is, for anybody that's out there, I knew that there was an ignition problem or a misfire problem. And that's because I didn't throw a hard fault. The check engine light on your car, if there's something that's a hard fault, will come on, it will stay on. I just got a flashing check engine light, which usually signifies that you do have a misfire or something happening in the car. So I knew once I got the shutter that it wasn't transmission related. I got a note on the dash that said reduce speed and shift up, because obviously it's thinking that something's going on and it wants to decrease the amount of load on the vehicle. And so we got a flashing check engine light and a really bad shutter. And so I pulled off to the side of the road. I'm hoping that once somebody watches this video, that, you know, the lesson that I learned from it is that even running, you know, a tune on a vehicle, definitely I'm going to be changing spark plugs more often and checking this, because the last thing you want to do is be on the side of the road. Even though this is fairly simple to do, it's something you just don't want to do with a family and sitting on the side of the highway.
Also, just think about this. It's easy to get passive about this stuff, but You think about the fact that the spark plug change on this thing is spec'd like 105 or 110,000 from the factory, and this car's at 118, and it starts melting.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive. Within 10% on the lifespan on these, and the engineers called it out from the time they designed this car at the factory 15 years ago.
So basically, after looking over all this, and you know, our goal is to make sure and keep families from being stuck on the side of the highway. The most important thing that we've learned from all of this is just to make sure and let our customers know how important it is to actually service your spark plugs. They do vary between all the different miles because there's a lot of information out there, but you know, you used to replace spark plugs every 20 to 30,000 miles, and now newer modern cars are going anywhere from 75,000 up to 120,000 miles, depending on the year, make, and model of a car, not necessarily just Volvo, but we've seen them on other models where it's just astronomical at what they're doing. But the fact is that if you change your spark plugs at the scheduled maintenance at the correct intervals and the right changes, more likely it's going to definitely help prolong the life of your coil, because it's not having to work as hard to, you know, basically jump that gap with its charge. So going hand in hand, we're really excited that IPD offers our HD coils that we make for you know, other models, and that we've added the T6 ones here with, you know, some upgraded pieces on the coil, which you can check out on our website. But I think, Ken, to wrap this up, anything else you want to say? I think it's the spark plugs that we were definitely wanting to pay attention to more out of this situation.
It's just really, really surprising. I mean, in this case, I think it was the extra wear on the spark plugs and the fact that this car is running a little bit hotter tune.
Yep.
That then is a two-strike situation. And then, you know, running that way for several hours straight, this was the result. And the fact that it did it twice in one day was just kind of a 1 in a million thing. But it's there. And this isn't the first time we've seen this issue. And you will know it if it happens. The stink is unbelievable.
Yeah, you definitely know it's going to happen. And I know it's scary for people when these do basically fail, because basically the materials will start to melt and it smokes horrifically bad, and it comes in through the air filter or the cabin air filter in your engine compartment. You get it inside the car, it just smokes, you can't see. So it smokes for probably a good 5 to 10 minutes. And once it's completely melted down, it will stop. More likely you will pop the fuse for the ignition coils itself. But, you know, I don't think that anybody has to worry about a car catastrophically, you know, catching on fire or anything like that. But it's not a good situation to be in. So the good news is that anybody can tackle this in their garage. They're accessible underneath the engine cover, which we'll get some B-roll for you as I'm installing the new spark plugs and the new coils in the vehicle. But literally, it's just a 10 millimeter that holds into one bolt. You got a clip here for the coil itself, for the ignition coil. You disconnect that, and these things pull right out. So if you are looking to maintain your car and save yourself a bunch of money, you can change the spark plugs and the ignition coils in your garage or in your driveway. I think that the confident do-it-yourselfer can knock this out and save yourself a ton of money, because at a dealership, you're going to spend quite a bit of money, or at an independent service center, they're going to charge you a couple hours worth of labor. The bill's going to be pushing, you know, it's going to be expensive. It's something that we want to avoid, and something that I know you can do yourself if you're looking to do maintenance on your car on your own. So completely, this is a doable job. The situation's avoidable, and you can monitor this. You can always pull a plug out of your car anytime, check the gap, look at how it's firing. There's a lot of things that your spark plug tells you about how your car's running. So we appreciate you guys tuning in, and hopefully we'll keep you off of the side of the highway running a fresh set of spark plugs and IPD ignition coils. There. 1, 2. I put spare. Maybe just highlight spare. Always keep a spare. That's it though, right there. That one, 20 amp spare. You can put 20 amp. Always keep a spare as a joke at the bottom. Magnetic socket. Down in there. Just doing that. That's it.
And now put one in the coils.
Now that I got the spark plug in there, I used basically a magnetic tool to drop down in there, so that way you guarantee that the gap stays straight. You don't want to drop your spark plugs in there on top of the cylinder because it could mess up the electrode on the spark plug itself. So got the spark plug in there, got it tightened down. Now I'm going to install the coil. This is one of IPD's coils. We've upgraded the silicone boots on these things to combat a lot of the heat that's contributed from the head here. These are fantastic coils. We're really happy with these things. So I'm going to go ahead and put one in. Just go down right over the top. And as you can see, if you don't remember, it's just got one 10mm bolt that goes through. You can see on the head where it's nice and clean where it actually attaches. Get that silicone down in there, push it down, and then basically line up your wiring harness, snap it in, and then go ahead and replace the bolt that holds it in place. And as you tighten down this bolt, you'll notice that it will suck down in the silicone. We'll even get a better seal. The silicone boot there around the top will get a really good seal to the top of the head. You don't want to over tighten these because they're just little bolts. So there you go. Nice and secure. We're going to go and finish it off with the 5 other cylinders.
Cool.